All right, now joining us on Tennis Channel Inside In, another edition of this podcast covering the game you know and love. Speaking with a former player, an Olympian, a very accomplished tennis player, now on to the next stage of her life. She got up to number 24 in the rankings, won a title, was a mainstay for American tennis, helped grow the game to this next chapter we're seeing now. Christina McHale, welcome to the show. It's been a while. I've been looking forward to chatting with you, so welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I want to start with this area because I always get to the backstory of these players and how you got there. You're very cultured, and I say that in the tennis world especially, which is a very cultured place. But I was researching up on you. You got the Irish roots, the Cuban roots, and then growing up and really discovering the game as an American, but living in Hong Kong. That has to be one of the more unique stories I've ever heard. But what was your tennis upbringing like? The first time you really got into playing the game in a foreign place to a lot of us.
Right, yeah. So when I was born in Jersey, and then when I was 3 years old, we moved to Hong Kong because of my dad's job. And we actually loved living there. And it's where, yeah, I first started playing tennis with my sister. There was a program where we lived in our complex, and they had a tennis program. And so my mom just kind of put my sister and I in to play. And then we came back to Jersey when I was 8. But yeah, that's where I got started.
So at that point, and I know you came back to Jersey, did you feel like your development really ramped up when you came back to the States? Because I know, and it's a cool story, you got to go back to Hong Kong as a pro and play in that event, but did you feel like there was a step up in terms of your development and how serious you're taking the game when you came back to America?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I was, pretty young when we were living in Hong Kong. So, I mean, it was pretty far from my mind to play professional tennis at that point. And I was playing other sports as well, like soccer and swimming. We were on a swim team, and my sister and I. And then, yeah, so when we got back to Jersey, we were still doing a lot of swimming and tennis. Those were like the two. And then definitely around like, yeah, 11, 12, I like really vamped up my training.
What separated tennis from the pack? Was it just your ability at it? Did you just love it more? Was there something special or anything like
Um, It was a combination of factors because actually, like so I have a sister. She's 2 years older than me, and we both had to make the decision. And it's funny because I definitely let her make the decision first, and then I followed after. But I think I obviously like had such a love and passion for tennis, and I think I always would have come back to it had I, maybe focused on swimming for, a little bit of time. I think tennis was definitely in the cards for me.
And if I have this right, you were 15 when you left home, like permanently for the first time, right around there?
I always like kept my home base as like this New York, New Jersey area, but yeah, I started training more at the USTA Center down in Boca and around that time. And that's when I was a sophomore in high school, is also when I started online school just because I was traveling so much.
Did you have any difficulty? Because that's a pretty big commitment. I know at that point you're really good. There's a path to being a pro, but there's no guarantees. And you're making a lot of sacrifices, giving up a lot that normal kids get to experience. Was there any difficulty with that decision for you?
I mean, I think the fact that I got to do it with my older sister, like we were definitely, I think played a huge factor, like, just getting to train together, and having that built-in support, I think helped a lot. And then, um, yeah, I think the fact that I could always, like, I would go train, for a couple weeks, but then come back, here to Jersey, like helped a lot. And, all my friends were from tennis too, so that helped.
Yeah, and it seems like, and there's been a lot discussed, Christina, with the USTA and what we're seeing now in this revamped era. And there's different mini pockets of eras. What was training in the USTA like for you at that time? We're talking 2007, 2008. What was it like?
God, that
What was
sounds so long ago.
I know it
Oh
was.
my gosh. No, I mean, I was very lucky. It was great, like having access to, great coaching staff, fitness staff, physios whenever I was, training down at the USTA, and just like having so many other Americans, like especially when I was coming up, there were so many of us that were kind of all pushing each other. And so, I mean, you could have, someone different to practice with every day, play different practice matches. And then when we were in Boca at USTA, Evert Tennis Academy was there. So you had just so many different players to practice with.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about players that just that you played with, that you met then, that went on to the pros. But the more I think about it, is you're not the first person from that era I've talked to. It seems like what Chris Everett did and setting up her academy and setting up all these players that came after her I mean, her impact on the game in a lot of ways is amazing, but that legacy might be the lasting one, that she set up this academy. And look at the names that came through there, whether it's yourself, Jenny Brady, Madison Keys went down there, Lauren Davis. There seemed like there was a lot of names that followed in her legendary footsteps.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's such a just great atmosphere down there. And like you said, there's just so many players have used that as a training base. And like then when USTA was there as well, it was just always crowded, like just always great energy to kind of push yourself, especially when you're dead tired practicing. You kind of lean on the people around you for sure.
What was it like? I'm just curious. What was it like to meet her for the first time? I mean, you're like, it could have been before that too, but it's got to be something like you're meeting a legend of the game.
Yeah, no, I mean you're definitely a little like starstruck when you meet her, but she's super down to earth, and so it created a great environment when USTA moved down there.
Now, I know you mentioned your older sister and she played collegiate tennis.
Hmm.
You decided to go
Yes.
to the pros early. So you're following her path up to this point, but then you kind of go in a different direction. What was the process of, I know you had a tremendous junior career and you were light years ahead of a lot of players your age, but what was that decision like to go pro?
I mean, it was a difficult decision for me just in the sense of like giving up a college scholarship. And I feel like my parents, kind of they're kind of realistic people. So they, definitely wanted me to make sure that I was fully committed, if I did turn pro. And um, I definitely thought a lot about it. But then having my sister who had when I was making that decision, she was already, had played 2 years of college tennis and I had, gotten to go and support her and see how much fun that was. But then she was definitely a big supporter of mine. And she was like, Chris, I think you can do it. Like, I think you're ready to turn pro. And obviously speaking with my coaches as well and everything. But it was a big decision for sure.
And you had that US Open main draw experience right before, like you had
Hmm.
played 2009. So I was looking at that. You beat Hercog, who's a tremendous pro, and then you got to play Sharapova.
Yeah.
Maria, that has to be like a welcome to. I know you hadn't turned pro, but that had to be like a welcome to the pros moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tournament that I grew up going to watch as a kid, living in this area. And then eventually I was training there on those courts. And so, I mean, yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any bigger, I think, playing like Ash match, a night match against Sharapova or a player of her, stature when I was that age. So it was definitely a little terrifying playing a
Yeah.
night match on Ash. But yeah, it was kind of that gave me the confidence of getting through that first round and then just more events like that to contributed to my decision to turn pro.
Right. There's a big distinction between, the players that turn pro and they have this US Open success, or really, and you could speak to this, they have early success after they've turned pro right before. But now in hindsight, you're like, there's so much that goes into a pro's career, the ups and the
Hmm.
downs. It's, I don't want to say fool's gold, but you've got to be willing to ride the wave because it's not always going to be the glory of a night match on Ash.
Definitely, I think for me, kind of my process of getting, you know, to the through the juniors and then the ITFs was kind of like a slow, gradual process, and so I think that kind of prepared me for when I got there.
When you turned pro and then you started your career those first couple of years, were you progressing the way you expected? Was there anything that surprised you about that path? Because you, as you alluded to, you started at the lowest level and you started working your way up. Was the progress about what you expected?
I mean, it's weird. Like in some ways, it felt like it was a kind of a slow process to get there, but looking back, I feel like it was kind of yeah, maybe I had more success at the beginning than I was expecting, but it kind of at the time, it feels a little bit slower. You always want more, you want more success, and so it's yeah, a little mix of feelings.
Because you rose like 100 spots, more than 100 spots in the ranking from like your first to second year with that pro bump and
Hmm.
going. But as I've talked to pros, they always say it's harder. Each breakthrough is
Definitely.
significantly harder. So 200 to 100 isn't as hard as 100 to like 75. But there had to be moments, right, when you're a pro and you're getting into some of these main draws and the WTA tour events where the locker room has to feel a little surreal at first, right? When you're in there and you're seeing all these pros that you in a lot of ways grew up watching.
Oh, absolutely. I think, yeah, for sure. Like playing in the U.S. Open, that first year that I did, and just kind of walking through the lounge, walking through like you said, the locker room and stuff. I'm like, how is this real life? It's a pretty surreal moment.
I wanted to take you through some of the moments that stood out. Obviously, the one that I remember, and I'm old enough now to have been at tennis for quite a bit, but I was here in 2016 at Wimbledon when you were playing Serena Williams in that one. Now, I know
Okay.
you grew up watching her and Venus and idolizing them.
Mhm.
Looking back at that match, right, because there's 2 sides to it. You were playing a legend, you're playing someone that you idolize, it's a surreal moment, but also, you were right there, like, you were up in the 3rd and there was a chance there. So how was your memory of that moment where you played this legend, but also could have won the match?
Exactly. So kind of like pre-match, I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm playing on, center court at Wimbledon against Serena. And so you're just kind of having all these thoughts go through your mind. And, part of it's like, I hope I don't get killed, like,
Yeah.
it's playing her on grass. But then once you get into the match, like I'm seeing, how kind of competitive it is. And, I had played her previously that year. And so, yeah, you just like kind of forget about all the outside noise and, um, yeah, I mean, I was pretty disappointed after that match just because, like, I was proud of the fight that I gave, but then you're obviously disappointed too because you were so close. And um, so, yeah, but I did take a lot of confidence in my level from that match.
Does anything change in, and this is just a curious question I have, obviously Wimbledon's like the gold standard, but at these other tournaments, does it change at all when you look back and the person you lost to actually won the title? Does that change anything?
Yeah, for sure. That helps to look at that. But yeah, I just like now looking back, I kind of take from that moment is just like the atmosphere was incredible. I think it had been raining, so like uh there wasn't play going on the outside courts, and so everyone kind of um came into center court and like closed the roof, and it was just really an electric atmosphere. So I'm left with some good memories from that match.
I read your article from years back on the Players Tribune where you talked about the 5 toughest players you played, but I thought
Yeah,
the best part was how you just simplified why they were so good, because it's
right.
hard for a lot of outside fans to understand. But with Serena, and I thought you hit the nail on the head, execution under pressure, because what
Absolutely.
she
Yeah.
does, there might be better technical players, there might be players that get into better patterns and all the technical stuff, but when it comes down to a big point, whether it's a serve, a break
Mhm.
point, a ground stroke she needs to hit the target, it seems like she just does it every time.
Yeah, I think her mental toughness is kind of unparalleled. And I think I mentioned too, like just how she starts the point too, like the serve and then the return just kind of like takes you off guard, like right from the start. I felt like once I got myself into the rally, that's where I gave myself more of a chance. But for sure, I think the last game when she served it out against me was like 4 aces or something in a row. So I feel like she is able to produce her tennis in like the most important moments.
More with Christina McHale here on Tennis Channel Inside In, talking to a former top 25 player, talking about her journey and what she's up to now, as well as we gear up for more tennis in 2024. You won that title in Japan in 2016, your only title on tour, but it still is a piece of hardware that a lot of players who play this game professionally don't have. So that run has to, and I know it does mean a lot to you, but I'll start with, was anything different about that week where you felt it looking back like, oh, this could be something special, or maybe as the tournament progressed, did you feel something going on?
Oh, that's a good question, but honestly, no. I can't tell you that I went into that match and like felt anything, or went into that tournament and felt anything different. I mean, definitely, I felt like I had played, well throughout the year and was kind of um, finding some of my best tennis. But it's funny because every match in that event was like a 7-6 in the third, almost 7-5 in the third. So um, I was kind of scraping through some of these matches, but gaining a lot of confidence in my ability to get through them. So that was something that I remember like sticking with me. Like kind of when you pull out, I feel like when you pull out a couple of tough matches, especially I think my first round was like 7-6 in the third. Like you just kind of uh, gain a lot of confidence from that.
Yeah, that last point you said, especially, there seems to be something with just finding a way to win a tight
Right.
early match,
Yeah.
and then you just have this confidence going forward. Well, I noticed, and it's probably how I would be too, like your first your first line, and how you remembered how you list your profile on LinkedIn, all this stuff says Olympian. And so I know 2012 had to have meant as much to you as anything in your professional life, being able to represent your country, the United States, in the Olympic Games.
It was incredible. I think like it wasn't something that I was even thinking about growing up. Like I, loved watching the Olympics, but it wasn't even on my radar. And so, kind of being able to be a part of the team in 2012 was honestly one of the coolest things ever. Walking in the opening ceremonies, And you just don't know if you're going to get another chance to go back. And so I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity. And just like I was there with my sister, we got to watch some of the other sports that were going on and just walking through the village with, all the other athletes there. Like it's looking back, I'm so grateful that I got a chance to go.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, obviously, you play on the Wimbledon courts, which is an
Mm-hmm.
experience of its own, being that the games were in London. But just walking out for that ceremony has to be the moment where you really do pinch yourself.
Oh, it was for sure a pinch me moment. And it was kind of, at one point, I wasn't even sure if I was going to go to the opening ceremony because I played that next morning. And so it was like such a conflict. I was thinking like, okay, I'm at the Olympics. Like, how could I not go to the opening ceremonies? But then, of course, I got scheduled to play first
Yeah.
on the next day. I'm like, what are the chances? But I was like, this is an opportunity that I cannot pass up on. And honestly, I think I actually, I lost my match the next day, but I actually felt my level was quite high. And I think the energy carried over from just being in that opening ceremony.
What was like I guess, most fun, maybe most peculiar sport you got to watch as a fan when you were there?
We went to beach volleyball, which was that's not an unusual sport, but
Uh,
it was so cool. And then actually in when we were um, at the opening ceremony, I actually got to take a picture with Kobe Bryant, which I have
wow.
hung up here in my house. So it was a very cool moment.
Wow. No, that's really cool. I think, that's the part where as a sports fan, you're just like, this is being a part of a brethren of athletes where it's bigger than just, we talk about this with the Olympics all the time. Like there's a sport like tennis, you're paid to play all this stuff.
Right.
Why would you value this tournament? It's not a major, it's not worth money. It's because of what you just said.
Yeah.
More to competition than that, obviously. When your career was progressing, I mean, because you kept it going for a long time, just recently retired.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there was a moment when it was starting to wind down?
Um, I think for me, like I'm just someone who I feel like when I'm doing something, like I'm either all in or I would rather be, doing something else. And so that was something like I always strived myself on in my career. Like it was just always giving my best effort. And so kind of when I decided to stop, I was just, starting to have these feelings of wanting to try something new and, have new experiences and things like that. And so that's why for me, it just felt like the right moment to move on to the next phase of my life.
Yeah, I saw it was posted online when you did retire by one of your friends, former guest on this show, Ali Risk, who said
Oh,
you're
I
just
love Allie.
yeah, you're just a consummate pro, and the way you went about your business, and retiring was that way. It wasn't a lot of fanfare. Didn't want to draw attention. You're just like, I competed, and this is it. And I thought at the time, without even knowing you, it speaks volumes of just how professional that is. Like I'm all in until I'm all out.
Right. No, thank you. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, it's and your career looking back on it, I think, and I'm not going to speak for you in this sense, but you got to levels that people haven't gotten to. Now I know that there's people on the outside that are like, oh, if it's not top 5, top 10, if you're not hosting
Right.
majors, but there are very few people that get to live this life and play pro. You did it and were able to win a title, be in the Olympics. So I don't know how you remember your career in that regard, but it is in the upper 1% of people that pick up a racket as a kid.
Thank you. I that means a lot. And I think, yeah, one thing I can say, I can kind of be at ease with is that I feel like I always gave my best effort, like whether it was on the practice court or on the match court. And of course, like the inner competitive person in you always wants more and will maybe look at back at my career and be like, oh, if I, had done this a little bit differently in this match, or if I had, you're always going to have that, I feel, but at least I do feel at ease that I know that when I was out there, I always gave my best effort.
Isn't it funny how everyone does that? Even on the outside, fans do that. Like, oh, if we only did this, but they never talk about the matches or games that they won barely that maybe they
Right?
should have.
Why is it that we focus on, oh, if I would have just hit that ball down the line, if I would have just,
Yeah,
but yeah, we forget about the times that we did do it right. Yeah.
yeah. Well, when you did retire, how quick did the process change of pro tennis player to non-pro tennis player? How did your life change? Maybe the time that you had, or
Yeah.
maybe not having to be as nutritious heavy, I'll say, as well as another.
I feel like I'm the type of person that I would rather work out as much as I need to, but still eat whatever I want to. So like that, I still work out quite a bit but it's definitely a transition. Like it's finding your kind of new routine and yeah, you have more time, but it's like, what are you going to do at this time? And so um, went back to school, and I'm, through IU East, they have a partnership with the WTA, which is really great thing that they have. And so I'm fingers crossed going to be graduating in this May. So that's I kind of threw myself all into that. And a couple of months after I retired, Vanya King and we actually went to Machu Picchu together, and like that was an incredible experience. So I feel like I've getting a chance to do some things that I didn't get to do, but I'm also finding ways to stay connected to tennis. So that's been really nice.
Yeah, I love Vanya. She's great. Talked to her about a year and a half ago, and I know you're on the board for the Serving Up Hope thing. What
Yes,
she's doing
exactly.
is just amazing. And what drew you to her, other than just Vanya King being an awesome person, but what drew you to kind of get involved in what she's doing?
First of all, I am so impressed by Vanya because I don't know how she is able to take on as much as she does and do such a good job at all of it. But yeah, I have known Vanya for years. She was one of the first players when I came on tour. And I always remember this. Like, she came up to me and was like, Christina, if you need anything, like, let me know. I'm here to help. And so since then, I just feel like we've developed a friendship. And so when she started her foundation, I first kind of served as an ambassador for the foundation, and I just saw firsthand like what amazing work that they do. And then when I stopped, she asked me if I would go on the board, and it was kind of a no-brainer because they do such amazing work.
They really do. And I'm just happy to see players like yourself, like Vanya, obviously giving back. And before we transition to the kind of final part of this, before I forget, I wanted to bring up, I mentioned your roots at the beginning of this. You got to, in 2017, travel to Cuba with your grandma. That had to just be an insanely special experience, given the landscape, what your grandma went through, but also your roots as a Cuban.
Exactly. Yeah, I think maybe it was 2016 we went, but it was definitely, I mean, I feel very connected kind of to my Cuban side and Cuban heritage. And so being able to go back with my grandma was definitely an experience that I'm so glad we had. And it just seeing, the way things are there, it's a little bit sad to see, but I think it was important for me to kind of get more in touch with that side, and especially to be able to do it with my grandma.
Makes you appreciate a lot, right? Like what we have,
Absolutely.
what
Absolutely.
we're taking for granted. So
Hmm.
glad you were able to do that. More wrapping up here with Christina McHale here on Tennis Channel Inside In. I want to talk about the current state of things because you're connected to the game as well, doing broadcasting now, covering the U.S. Open for the World Feed and the SEC. I read you're
Oh,
covering
yeah.
college, so you got both sides of it. But what drew you to be on the other side, being a broadcaster, and how's that adjustment been?
It's been fun. I hope to do more of that. I had a great experience last year at the Open, and I think it's the kind of thing like the more reps you get in, the better. So I think what kind of drew me to that is, I've still played against a lot of the players that are playing right now. So that's where I feel like I can be more of value is, being able to just talk about what it feels like to play against some of these players. And the college that I did last year was a lot of fun. I'm actually going to do ACCs this year, which my sister's excited about because she played in the ACC at UNC. So yeah, the more I'm just trying to try a lot of different things with my time. So the more opportunities that I can do that, I'm excited.
Yeah, you're so close to your retirement that you have a lot of inside knowledge of what's
Yeah.
going on. And I would ask you this: what's changed from the women's game from when you came in the most? I mean, there's been changes, but what adjustments, what changes have you seen with women's tennis in 2024 versus back when you started to be a pro?
I think the level just keeps on getting like higher and higher. I think everyone kind of has taken their fitness to another level. I think um, when I first started to now, I feel like a lot more players are traveling with a full-time fitness coach and, putting such more of an emphasis on that. And so I think, the game is stronger and just, to like just the string and the rackets and everything is just getting, faster. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's just so much work to I feel like to stay in the top 100 and even higher.
Yeah, I feel like size, strength,
Hmm.
athleticism, it's all
Yes.
kind of increasing. And yeah, you're seeing it from a depth standpoint. There's not that
Hmm.
centralized, power at the top. And it's also kind of nice to see, the reinforced emphasis put on mental health too, and people speaking out
Absolutely.
when
Yes.
they need to take a break, which is good to see. Well, I want to get you out of here on this. I know you've got some interest outside of the tennis world. I got a not like a bone to pick, but just bring up, you root for sports teams that are just all like 90s and great, like Yankees, North Carolina basketball, and all these other things. So your sports fandom is pretty strong.
Oh, when I start talking about the Yankees, like I could go on for an hour about like we're my whole family and I we're such diehard Yankee fans, and so I'm like not expecting, but I'm hoping for big things from them this season. I love going to games, so yeah, it's just such a nice family thing to do. And then yeah, now I'm like an adopted Tar Heel through my sister, so I'm excited to root for UNC.
I saw the photo with you in at the Joe Torre Golf and Tennis
Hmm.
Classics. I gotta ask. I mean, that had to be a cool moment. But describe. I know he's a little older, but Joe Torre's tennis game.
He actually didn't take part in the tennis
Uh, just a photo up.
portion, but he stopped by. He was great. He was just so personable, which was like so nice to see when there's someone that you kind of have grown up watching and on TV and things like that. And he was so nice, and just like the work that that foundation does is incredible. So I was really happy to be a part of
You do great work, and as well as I think something else you like to do is, if I have this right, fishing.
that. Oh my God. That like if you would have asked me like what is the last thing that a photo of me that you would have seen, it was probably
Yeah.
fly fishing like that. But it was so much fun. I did that in New Mexico last year. So that's like, yeah, it's just been cool to like do things that I never would have thought I would have done.
No, I agree. It's eye-opening, especially when you have this time to travel and see things, and I think I saw you drinking Guinness as well, so you're in the full.
That's my Irish roots right there.
Yeah, have to. Well, Christina, this has been great. The last question I have for you is, kind of an open-ended one, but if you were gonna give, advice to players in your position, as an 18-year-old
Mhm.
starting this journey, what would that be? Advice to young female pro tennis
Ooh.
players.
Think like it's kind of cliche, but kind of like enjoying the journey. I think when I look back now, like you're like, wow, what I was doing was so cool. And then I think sometimes when you're in the moment, you're like so focused on results, and you kind of maybe don't enjoy it as much as you could. Or I would even say too, like if you're going, and you kind of feel like you need a break, like take one. I feel like there's no harm in that, and maybe that's sort of like a hindsight thing for me. But I think the, kind of getting away, you get a little bit of perspective. Yeah.
No, it's very wise, and it's hard for a person that age to really fully comprehend that. We've all
Right.
been there, but it is the best advice, and just having mentors and people that look out for them is the best. So, Christina McHale, this was a blast. Glad we were able to connect and do this podcast. You're more than welcome on the show again. Hope to chat with you in the future. But best of luck with broadcasting, your post tennis life, graduating from Indiana this
Yeah.
spring. But thank you, Christina McHale, for coming on Tennis Channel Inside In.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.